You're listening to The Rick Howe Show, where Halifax comes to talk. News 95.7. Now, here's Rick.
Coming up now to 10:48. We talked with Dr. John Gillis yesterday during his house calls visit about the so-called liberation treatment for MS patients. The doctor telling us that studies have so far discounted this as a means of treating MS. I believe the word he used was bunk. Tell that to Chris Alkenbrack. It's been 5 years since the Annapolis Valley resident went to Poland for the treatment. And Chris joins me on the phone this morning for an update. Good morning, Chris.
Hi, Rick. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Not too bad.
Good. I got an email from you this week. You say it's been 5 years since you had your treatment in Poland and still no regrets. Though some of your symptoms have come back, you say you've still not used your wheelchair in 5 glorious years. Tell me more. Right. Tell me more about how are you feeling today in regards to this now? What symptoms have come back?
Well, I just made a quick table of my symptoms. My walking before CCSVI was limited to about 200 meters with canes. After CCSVI, because of the balance that improved and so forth, I could walk easily 200 meters with only one cane, and even up to a kilometer sometimes. Now I'm back to 2 canes for long walks. Okay, so but still I had at least 4 great years in walking improvement. Vision has improved, fatigue levels, severely fatigued before. Now I'm sleeping a little bit more than I used to and having afternoon naps and so forth.
Hey, I have afternoon naps too. I love my afternoon naps.
Yeah, that's because you're old, Rick.
Well, there is that too, yeah.
Yeah. No, but bladder dysfunction, I was on 2 medications before my CCSVI treatment, which I was able to stop for 3 years. Now I'm back on them. The ability to think and process information, we call it cog fog in the world of MS. Oh, it's back a little bit, having trouble concentrating sometimes.
But it's still your lifestyle is a whole lot better today still than it was before you underwent the treatment.
In quality of life measurements, I would say absolutely.
And you are not alone. I mean, we have had, over the last couple of years, we have heard from a number of people who are telling similar stories, Chris.
Yes, absolutely. And I still have lots of friends who've had the treatment, sometimes even 2 and 3 times, and they're still, feeling benefits from their treatments, and things that can't be, dismissed or anyway.
What do you say to the medical community? What do you say to those like Dr. Gillis? And I'm not sure where Dr. Gillis stands on this. He was just repeating what basically some of these new studies are saying, that this treatment, this therapy is more of a placebo effect than anything else.
Well, I didn't get that, actually. I listened to Dr. Gillis's approach yesterday, and I really appreciated it. First of all, he didn't take a patronizing tone like many neurologists have done that I've heard interviews on the radio and TV and so forth. Dr. Gillis seemed very open to the fact, and one point that I wanted to mention is that he often referred to blocked veins. In my treatment, I had very little blockage in my left jugular vein. I had valvular problems. I had valves, inverted valves, and even when the interventional radiologist who performed, or the vascular surgeon who performed the procedure on me, explained it to my wife. I even have this on video that I watched the other day. He was explaining that, they could have been congenital. They could have been there from birth. They could cause MS. And I like the way that Dr. Gillis separated the things and said, some of these issues might not even be caused by MS. They might be something different from MS. And it may work on a subset of MS patients and not others. And, that's what the research is showing now as well. And I really appreciate that.
What about some of the studies that have been taking place? I believe Saskatchewan was at the forefront of studying this.
No, the Saskatchewan study stopped. It was actually supposed to take place in Albany, New York, and for reasons unknown, it just stopped.
So are we not doing any more studies on this now, or what's going on?
There is a Canadian study ongoing, and it's done by BC neurologist Anthony Trabulsi. And what I find interesting in that is they've changed the protocol in how to measure CCSVI and so forth. And when you want to confirm whether something works or not, you're not supposed to change any of the parameters. And some of the parameters have been changed in the BC study. I'll give you a couple examples. I have 2 people that I know from the online community that I've spoken with, actually, who have been tested for CCSVI by the BC and the Quebec branch of this study that's ongoing, for the next year or so in Canada. And both people were told they didn't have CCSVI. They go to one of the world,
recognized
practitioners in this. They get rescanned, and they told they have CCSVI. They have the procedure, and they're back in Canada doing really well.
Wow.
And they were told, So when you're talking about a study and you change the parameters, are we being truly honest in a scientific manner? I don't think so.
Are there any other countries that are doing anything a little more scientific, perhaps?
Well, of course. Zamboni is continuing his studies. It's called Brave Dreams.
But hasn't Zamboni's the guy that first brought this basically to our attention? Hasn't he kind of backed away from that too now?
Absolutely not.
No?
On the contrary, Brave Dreams, the study there is ongoing. There's also a study, a very interesting study, being done in Australia right now. In fact, the Australian doctor was here to present at a Canadian conference, and they're finding some very interesting things in Australia. So, I think we're still at the, very beginnings of all of this. And I think Dr. Gillis gave a very honest and fair opinion. It does work for a subset of MS patients, and we have to know who it works for and who it doesn't work for. I was fortunate to have more than 4 years of benefit. I'm still reaping the benefits of my procedure. I'd go back tomorrow in a heartbeat for another one if I had the funds to do so.
Yeah, so it's still not available in Canada, obviously.
No,
there are clinics, or at least one in the U.S. that's doing this still, or is that have they stopped?
There are a couple clinics in the U.S. Still doing the procedure, and great doctors.
What was the MS Society? I know initially when we talked some years ago, Chris, they were very much not on board with this. Have they changed their outlook on this at all?
Absolutely not.
No?
Absolutely not. And the neurologists who run the MS Society have not. In fact, that was one issue that I had with Dr. Gillis's, one of the statements he made yesterday. He said the vast majority of MS worldwide, and the word from the MS associations that were touting this, there were, to my knowledge, and I've been very, up to date on the research going on worldwide, to my knowledge, no MS association ever touted this. In fact, they're run by neurologists, and they were always against it, And I think that we need to look at the patients. Had they tracked us, Rick? Had they tracked us and kept really good data, they would know already something, and they would know about that subset of patients that it worked for or not.
I'm surprised they haven't done that, Chris.
Yeah, no, they haven't done it, and they had no interest in it. Just one quick interesting fact. Since I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1992, and I've had regular MRIs, especially in Quebec, and I always had multiple new lesions on my brain after each MRI, and I always had at least 3 active lesions on my brain. Well, I had an MRI in June of last year, and I have no active lesions, and I only had one new very small lesion after almost 5 years at that time.
Wow.
This is significant information and a significant clinical information, and my neurologist is aware of this, and I did go back to the MS clinic after 4 years, and I have a great neurologist who I think is a little more open-minded than some of the older, the old boys club, and I'm grateful for that.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're doing well, Chris, and unfortunately, we're still in a situation where we have to convince the medical community that this is the right thing, but comments from the likes of Dr. Gillis indicates that maybe they're turning the corner on that as well, huh?
Oh, well, no, I got a different perspective on that, and I felt that Dr. Gillis was very open about it, and I know he's not a specialist in MS by any means. He's an emergency room doctor, I believe.
Yeah.
I've seen him on Eastlink television before, and I've always appreciated his opinions, and I think he gives very cautious opinions, and that's important to do. And I am going to send him an email, though, to correct a couple of things that I feel that were maybe misleading or faulty information.
Well, I'm sure
incomplete.
I'm sure he'd appreciate that. Again, he's a man. You're right. He's a very open-minded individual, Dr. Gillis.
Yes. Yeah.
Chris Alkenbrack, good to hear from you again.
Thank you very much, Rick.
Glad things are working out pretty well for you.
Yes. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Chris Alkenbrack, an MS sufferer and a man who underwent that liberation treatment and says it has done marvels for him.